Hi, and welcome to day 28 of 365 Days of Art. You can see yesterday, day 27, where I did a one-stroke flower composition that I kind of came up with on my own. So we're closing the chapter on the one-stroke technique for right now. We'll probably return to it in the future. So for today, as kind of a palette cleanser, if you will, I'm going to be doing some watercolor. I always like it just because it's usually a very calming experience. Even when I can't get quite what I'm trying to do, I really enjoy just watching the way that the watercolors flow across the page and can create some really beautiful effects under the right instruction. The video that I've picked out today is by Shayda Campbell. It's called Every Watercolor Leaf You'll Ever Need. Sounds good to me. I like to start with leaves, and then I think she has another video that's called Every Watercolor Flower That You'll Ever Need, and we may follow up with that tomorrow. Kind of doing the same thing that I did with the one stroke. We'll do leaves today, flowers tomorrow, and then I'll put together kind of my own thing with what I've learned, and then we'll be ready to move on to something new. That being said, let's paint. All right, I've got my Japanese watercolors. I used this set because this seemed to be the pretty good budget set of nice watercolors. It has really great reviews on Amazon. If you just search for Japanese watercolor set, this is probably what's going to pop up. They're highly pigmented. Everyone says they actually hold their light fastness really well, which is important in watercolor. It's one of those mediums that can fade really terribly over time, so I quite like it. You can see my two brushes here. I have two round brushes. They are different from my acrylic brushes. These have better bristles on them that actually hold and retain the water better. So for watercolor, that's where you've probably seen maybe about like sable bristles and sable brushes. And when it comes to watercolor, those are really important. You can see I'm getting started here. So your paper is important as well. And I know I've mentioned this before, but even just getting watercolor paper rather than regular paper is really helpful. This isn't expensive. I just got the 140-pound weight from the craft store to practice on, and already I notice a difference. My colors stay where I put them on the page. They're not running all over the place, and the water's not buckling. I'm using quite a bit of water throughout this entire thing. Similar to acrylics, you can see where it can be all about that pressure and then lightening off that pressure to get the different shapes and different lines. The biggest issue I'm having, and if I stay in watercolor, is I may get a slightly better set of brushes just because I'm having issues with the bristles on this one. Even though you can use a larger round brush and just use the tip of it to get those fine lines, it depends on how your bristles are holding up and staying shaped. You can see I grabbed a smaller brush to help with this just a little bit. And part of that is because when you're painting with acrylics, I easily use my cheap round brushes because acrylics hold the bristles together a little bit more. You know, it is kind of a more plasticky type medium, whereas with the watercolor, all you really have in your bristles are water and pigment, so none of that's giving any shape to your brush. So the actual designed, manufactured shape of your brush is really important when you're picking that out. And this is just my opinion. After all, I'm just practicing. I'm not really a watercolor artist. These are all just me giving it a whirl here. And you can see I'm trying to do most of my leaves just with one or two strokes, and that's what she does really well in the video and explains that, because when you're going for that, more light effect, just almost the transparency that I think most of us are trying to achieve when we're painting watercolor, and you get that by not overworking your watercolors. It is about the amount of water that you're using in the pigment of your watercolor, but it is also about how you apply it to the paper. Every little step counts. I would say watercolor is probably a great practice of mindfulness, because you can't really take away. Once you put something down for watercolor, it's not like acrylic where I can choose just to paint over it, whether with another color or even just white it out with titanium white or a medium. With watercolor, once you've put color on the page, there's a technique where you can clean your brush out and kind of take it back up, but it's not the same as a freshly clean page. You don't get the same lines and the same beautiful effect of that kind of transparency. Oh, I grabbed yet even another smaller brush. I have a small handful. I got excited. There was a sale. I think we've all been there. Collecting artist quality stuff and actually painting with it are two very separate hobbies. And you can see right there what I was talking about. You know, I messed up with the color and it's kind of a darker green, so it's really hard to take away. And it threw me off at first, but this is where mistakes are okay. Not just because we're learning, but because sometimes it can look really cool too. So I bounced back from it. I wasn't going to start over. I wanted to actually still practice the leaf. So I just painted it in purple and then added a little bit of green. Acted like I wanted that color there the entire time. And that's how easy that can be. You just look at something, you take a moment, shake it off, breathe. It's okay to be frustrated, but then start troubleshooting in your head, you know. How can I go ahead and make this better and not just scrap the whole piece? So on the end here, I finished the tutorial and I was just playing around on my own. I decided to use some of my slightly bigger brushes. I probably should have used an even bigger brush for those leaves. And that's something else I'm learning about watercolor that I've already talked about a little bit in this video, is it does seem to be all about the choice of the brush for the application to get the color to do exactly what you want it to do. So if you're getting into watercolor, it's okay to be a little pickier about your supplies for this. You want to be, but because you're gonna get nice things, you also want to take really good care of them. So you don't want to be too harsh with the bristles. I decided to redo the pink one just because I didn't really get a pink one. I put green in it, so I wanted to see how they looked together. And overall, this was really great practice. It was just so nice to paint all the different leaves and calming. I always find watercolor to be very calming. I think it can easily be stressful because you're so afraid of marring your paper, especially. You could be getting to the end and you're terrified you're going to drop a water droplet on it or screw it up, but I just take a deep breath and it's like yoga for the mind. I just breathe, take my time, and think very carefully about each movement of my brush on the paper. I just take a couple extra minutes for mindfulness with it, and I love that. Wrapping everything up for today, I'm very happy with how everything came out. Loved following the tutorial, so I do recommend it. If I can follow along, I promise you could follow along. The big thing is going to be make sure you have the right materials. Use watercolor paper, use brushes that are actually meant for watercolor. Try to get a little slightly nicer than, you know, student grade watercolor that you would use with maybe your kids. Because if you're getting frustrated, watercolor is much more finicky than acrylic. Acrylic you can kind of push and pull and fight it a little bit and get it to do what you want, but watercolor is a lot more delicate, more finicky. It's way too easy to muddy those colors on the page. So give yourself a better chance and start out with the right materials in the first place. That's my best advice as far as watercolor goes. So I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope that you had fun watching today. If you did, please like and subscribe to my channel to see more videos as they come out. I would love to hear what you are up to. Hit me up down in the comments. I'll see you later. Bye.